I touched the silver button and accidentally unlocked the seal of an alien girl, and this happened. Have you ever felt the weight of an irreversible mistake? That gut-wrenching realization that you just did something you can never take back. Now imagine that feeling multiplied by 1,000 while floating in the cold abyss of space. And instead of spilling your coffee, you've just unleashed something that was never meant to be set free. It all started with a silver button. It sat there, embedded in the console of an abandoned derelict drifting lifelessly in the Epsilon sector. It wasn't just a button, it was a temptation, a whisper in the back of my mind daring me to press it. And like an idiot, I did. The ship groaned, long dead circuits flaring back to life. A tremor shook the floor beneath me. Then, with a metallic hiss, a hidden stasis chamber cracked open. Inside, a girl. Or at least, something wearing the shape of one. And in that moment, as she opened her eyes dark, endless, and knowing, I realized I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. What would you have done in my place? Press the button, or walk away? Let me know in the comments. The chamber exhaled a cloud of frost, the hiss of decompression slicing through the silence like a blade. Then, she awoke. Her eyes snapped open, twin orbs of shimmering violet, but not the soft lavender of earthly flowers. No, these were galaxies trapped in flesh, swirling with an unfathomable depth, each star burning with ancient knowledge. They saw me. Not just looked, but saw, peering past skin and bone, straight into the core of my being. Her skin was a deep, obsidian blue, a shade so dark it seemed to drink in the dim light of the ship's failing systems. Silver bioluminescent markings traced delicate, alien patterns across her form, pulsing not randomly, but in perfect synchrony with my own heartbeat. As if we were already connected in some way I couldn't understand. Then, she moved. Not like a person stepping forward. No shift of weight, no hesitation. She flowed, liquid mercury made flesh, her form hovering inches above the ground, her presence distorting the air around her like a ripple in space-time itself. And then, she spoke. Her voice wasn't just sound, it was a sensation, a resonance that settled into my bones. It rang, high and crystalline, but layered beneath it was something deeper, an echo of power, the sound of colliding stars and unraveling nebulae. You are not my captors. Where is the prim arch of Zyra? Which, in human terms, roughly translates to, who the hell are you, and what did you do with the people who locked me up? My mouth went dry. I tried to speak, because, hey, first contact with an unknown alien entity. Kind of a big deal. But before I could get a word out, before I could even breathe, the ship trembled violently. Warning sirens howled to life. Rusted panels buckled. A terrible groaning echoed through the hull. And just beyond the viewport, something massive was stirring in the darkness. Something that had just woken up with her. Apparently, cracking open a 1,000-year-old stasis chamber doesn't just wake up the occupant, it also sets off an emergency beacon. And guess who came knocking? The Zarkai Dominion, a species whose idea of diplomacy involved planetary bombardment and cultural extinction. They didn't just conquer worlds, they collected them, like some cosmic hoarder obsessed with adding new trophies to their blood-stained archives. Within minutes, space tore open. 3 Dominion warships emerged from hyperspace, their crimson hulls gleaming like serrated blades against the abyss. Sleek, predatory things, bristling with plasma cannons and zero hesitation. Because the moment they got a good look at our ship, they didn't bother with greetings. They opened fire. A barrage of plasma lanced through the void, illuminating the derelict's interior with flashes of molten orange. The first shot grazed the hull, sending a violent shudder through the ship. The second closer. I braced for the third, because if their aim improved by even a fraction, we were about to be space dust. Meanwhile, Zyra turned to the viewport, watching the approaching death squad with what I can only describe as mild disappointment. Not fear. Not urgency. Just the look of someone watching a toddler throw a tantrum in a grocery store. She let out a slow breath before fixing her gaze on me. You are either a fool or a death seeker. To which I, in my infinite wisdom, responded with, both. That's when she raised her hand. No weapons. No tech. Just her fingertips barely brushing the air. The temperature plummeted. The ship groaned as reality itself bent, space warping around us like a heat mirage in reverse. A soundless pressure crushed down on everything. Then, the warships stopped. Not slowed. Not hesitated. Stopped. Frozen mid-space, as if the universe had hit pause. Their weapons flickered, energy dissipating like dying embers. Their engines sputtered, struggling against some invisible force that made even the laws of physics seem optional. And then, she smiled. Not a smirk. Not an arrogant grin. A genuine, amused smile, like she'd just found a new toy to play with. She turned to me, violet eyes gleaming with something both ancient and terrifying. Let's negotiate. So there I was. Trapped on a half-functional derelict, adrift in deep space, with a newly awakened alien goddess and 3 very angry warships that she had just casually rewritten the laws of physics to freeze in place. You know, a totally normal Tuesday. Faced with the sheer insanity of my situation, I did the only thing a reasonable person would do. So, what exactly do you want? Zyra tilted her head, studying me with those impossible violet eyes. Her expression remained unreadable, but there was a weight in her gaze, something ancient, something calculating. And then, she spoke. Freedom. Not vengeance. Not conquest. Just, freedom. Turns out, Zyra wasn't just some forgotten prisoner from an ancient war. She was a weapon designed, engineered, and ultimately feared by the Zetherans, the civilization that created her. She was meant to be their final answer to the Dominion's endless expansion, their ultimate guardian against extinction. But they never used her. Because they were just as terrified of her as they were of their enemies. So instead of unleashing their creation, they sealed her away, burying her in the void, hoping that time would erase both their fear and their mistakes. And now she wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of being someone else's pawn. She took a slow step forward, not floating this time, but walking, deliberate, measured. The air still hummed with power, but now it was contained, coiled like a serpent waiting to strike. Give me passage beyond the outer rim, she said, voice as smooth as starlight, and I will spare your life. A fair trade, right? Let her go, live another day. Except for one tiny problem. The Dominion was already hailing us. A deep, guttural tone echoed through the ship's failing speakers, followed by a voice like grinding metal and burning embers. Unknown vessel, you will surrender the anomaly at once. Non-compliance will result in annihilation. Something told me they weren't in a negotiating mood. The Dominion had us dead to rights. 3 warships, primed to fire, their weapons already heating up. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was it, that I had officially lived my last, stupid moment. And then, Zyra moved. She didn't touch a control panel. She didn't give a command. She just reached out, fingers brushing the air as if plucking a thread from the fabric of the universe itself. And ripped it open. Reality fractured. A tear unraveled before us, a jagged rift of swirling blues, purples, and impossible black, spiraling like a star collapsing in reverse. It wasn't a wormhole in the way humans understood it. This wasn't physics, this was her will made manifest. I barely had time to strap in before the ship lurched forward, gravity snapping sideways as we were yanked into the rift. Hyperspace didn't just blur past us, it melted, colors bleeding together like an oil painting thrown into a furnace, shapes stretching and twisting into infinity. And just like that, we were gone. The Dominion didn't stand a chance. Drifting in the aftermath. After what felt like eternity, the ship finally groaned as it punched back into real space. Silence. No alarms. No missiles. No pursuing warships. Just the quiet hum of a barely functional starship floating in the endless black, drifting toward the faint glow of a distant neutron star. Its pale light cast long, jagged shadows across the cabin, flickering as the ship's systems fought to stay online. My hands unclenched from the armrests. I hadn't even realized I'd been gripping them hard enough to leave marks. I let out a slow breath. And that's when it truly hit me. I had just freed an ancient superweapon. A superweapon who, at this very moment, was watching me with unsettling curiosity. She stood there, perfectly still, the remnants of cosmic energy crackling faintly along her silver-lit markings. Her violet eyes studied me, not cold, not hostile, but something deeper. Appraising. Calculating. And then, finally, she spoke. "What will you do now, human?" Her voice was different this time. Less celestial decree, more genuine interest. I glanced at the half-broken console, at the dim status lights blinking in protest, at the empty void stretching endlessly outside. I gave her a lopsided shrug. "I dunno," I said, exhaling. "But I'm guessing my schedule's pretty open." For a long moment, she just stared. And then, she laughed. Not a sinister laugh. Not an ominous, godlike chuckle. A real, genuine, amused laugh. Soft. Light. Unexpected. And somehow, that scared me more than anything else. So, yeah. That's the story of how I went from being a broke, no-name scavenger barely scraping by on the fringes of the galaxy, to the reluctant companion of a cosmic-level being who can bend reality like it's made of Play-Doh. Am I terrified? Absolutely. Am I regretting pushing that button? Still debating. On one hand, I've basically thrown myself headfirst into a situation that should have gotten me disintegrated, imploded, or turned into a cosmic footnote. On the other hand, I just got a front row seat to something impossible. Because Zyra isn't just some ancient superweapon. She's something beyond that. More than a machine, more than a tool of war. She's awakening, rediscovering herself, deciding what she wants to be now that she's no longer a prisoner. And somehow, I'm part of that equation. For better or worse. One thing's for sure, this is going to be one hell of a ride. And if the Dominion thinks they're just going to take her back, well, they're going to have to go through us first. And that is how I accidentally made an enemy of an entire galactic empire.